Hey everybody, I'm Todd, and this is Streaming on Streaming. Welcome to Streaming on Streaming. I am Todd Sharp, and I am the lead developer advocate for Amazon IVS. So what is Streaming on Streaming? Well, Streaming on Streaming is a brand new weekly live show right here on the AWS Twitch channel. And in this show, we're going to focus on developer-friendly topics related to live streaming web applications. And the focus is going to be on Amazon Interactive Video Service. Before we get started talking a little bit more about the show and what the show is going to be, what the format's going to be, what kind of episodes you should expect, let's lay a few ground rules. Number one, first and most importantly, there will be no marketing ever. I am a developer and this show is going to be developer focused. We're going to discuss topics that matter to developers. We're going to focus on live streaming, as I said, and you're not going to hear sales pitches. As I said, I'm a developer. I talk about developer-friendly topics. I don't do sales pitches. If I had to do sales pitches, I would have a really hard time making a living. So I'm going to be honest with you. I think Amazon IVS is a really great service. I think it's very powerful, and I think that you can build really cool things with it. And I will also be honest with you. So if there is something that I don't think is perfect, nothing is perfect, but if there's a feature or service or something about IVS that's not perfect, I'm going to be honest with you. And I will work with our engineers, our PMs, all of our team to make sure that we make it right and make it perfect as best we can. Ground rule number two, please keep it friendly. No offensive chats, no spam, no insensitive, no abuse. Please keep it friendly. We're all here to learn, have fun, and have a good time. So please make sure you're not posting spam or anything like that in the chat. Ground rule number three, please, this is interactive. Ask questions. If you have something you want to know, if you have a topic that you want to learn about, please let us know in the chat and we'll be glad to consider them and answer your questions as quickly as we possibly can. And ground rule number four, I already mentioned it, but ground rule number four is have fun. We are here to have fun. It's a great product. It's a fun topic to talk about, and it's not a sales pitch. It's not marketing. So let's have fun and let's talk a little bit about the format of the show. So it's going to be a very, very varied format, I guess you could say. You're going to see a lot of probably live coding demos and things from very basic topics like how to get started with Amazon IVS, how to create a channel, how to create a video playback in the browser. And there's also going to be advanced topics. We'll get into deeper things using timed metadata, auto recording to S3, things like that. So it's going to be a very broad range, but again, it's going to be driven by what you want to see. So let us know what you want to see, what you want to learn about, and we will focus on that. And if we have to bring a guest on, we'll bring a guest on. There will be other fun projects. Maybe around the holidays, we'll build out a lo-fi radio station or tinker around with hardware. I like to tinker with hardware and microcontrollers and hack all kinds of fun things. So yeah, stick around. You never know what's going to happen. Again, ideas always welcome. And finally, we're also going to have special guests like we do today. And we are about to get into that. Today, we have a very special guest, a very fun person to talk to, very smart and interesting person as well. And joining us today is the General Manager of Amazon Interactive Video Service and Vice President of Video at Twitch. Couple titles there, Marty Hess. Hi, Marty. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Excellent. Let me turn your volume down just a little bit here so we're not going too loud. Perfect. Marty, nice to see you. Thank you for joining us and taking the time to be with us today. Let me check my notes here. So you've been the general manager of Amazon IVS for 2 years now, right? And the vice president of video at Twitch since 2019, I think.
A while, yes.
But you've been at Twitch for 9 years now, which is like an eternity in technology and technical careers these days. Back when you joined in 2013, Twitch was quite less, much less of a household name than it is today. How'd you end up here? How did you actually end up working for Twitch? I think this is a fascinating story. I've heard it before, but I think it's
Well, I'm not sure if
fascinating.
fascinating is the word, but it is a story. So I was retired. I'd been retired for a while. I'd worked on the early days of eBay and did well, and thought I would stay home and help raise my kids, and I had a great time with that. Started getting bored, so I was programming a lot for fun. But I needed company, so I started playing Hulu and Netflix, and after a while, it was like, I think I've seen everything they have. Um, and so I started watching Twitch, not because I knew anything about Twitch, not that I knew it was good. It's just I was told it's a good place to learn to play StarCraft better, because I was a StarCraft player wanting to be much better than I actually was. And so I started watching, and I found that I was watching more and more, and then I started watching non-StarCraft things. I was chatting with the broadcasters, and I was thinking, wow, this is really quite compelling. And I'm not sure why. I mean, this is not $1 million produced content,
Right.
but it was something about it that just was very captivating for me beyond just the subject matter. So my conversations with different broadcasters and viewers, it became more clear that it was the human connection that was really the valued part of what Twitch had to offer. So I got pretty excited, and they were having a lot of operational challenges in those early days.
Mm-hmm.
They were growing very fast, and it was hard to keep up. And so I ended up just sending a cold email to the CEO and asked him if I could work. And
How often does that happen? I mean, was that you think it was more common back? Sorry to interrupt you, but that just it's still it cracks me up and blows my mind every time I hear that. Like you just happen to guess his email and just cold email the CEO of a
well,
company.
founders and early in the early people who start a startup almost invariably use their first name at companyname.com.
Right.
It's just a natural thing to do. When you're in a large company, you rarely get that opportunity. So it's usually the first thing people hop on and do. It's it was just a guess
How
that
big was the
did
company
work.
back then?
I think it was around 100. I think
Oh wow. And
it was
we're
pretty big because of the Justin TV
right.
days.
Right.
The Twitch portion of it was rather small,
Right.
but it quickly grew and took over the whole company, and that became the company after I think less than a year.
Right. So that was 2013, 9 years ago, coming up on 10. And I skimmed through your LinkedIn and because I never really knew all your various roles, but I looked through your LinkedIn and you've been in chat, video players, distribution, ingest, transcoding. There's really no part of Twitch that you haven't touched in your 9 years here.
Yes.
I mean,
There's
you've
actually a lot more in there. One of the things is my strong interest was video, because I thought that was a fun technology to learn. But I ended up getting almost every function on the engineering side at one point or another, and um, then trying to find somebody else to own it. Trying to help
handing it
hire
off.
somebody.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's a hot
it was a
potato.
very different time. It wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily that I had any particular talents, other than I was just here and there was just too much to do for everybody. So it was here, take this and
So
take this and take this. And then it was, okay, well, somebody needs to do this, has time and a strong interest in
right,
doing this well. And so then it would be try and find somebody to own those pieces. And we've got great owners for all those pieces. And it's very exciting because now it's easier to focus strongly on the thing that I'm most passionate about, which is the video and interactivity pieces. Because there's everything else that's absolutely critical for Twitch to function well, and they all needed, strong, dedicated owners. So
right,
we have like Mike Minton over on the whole commerce side, being able to help streamers make more and more money through
right,
streaming. We have Tom, who's driving all our growth and making a better viewer and broadcaster experience. The number of great leaders that we have is really great. It's phenomenal. It allows me to sleep well and only focus on the one thing that that matters to me the most, which is making sure it's a great video experience for everybody.
Right. So I've joined Twitch in June, so I haven't been here a long, long time. And I was going to get to this later, but I I kind of feel like it all kind of starts at the top, right? Because my first week, I and this may sound pandering to some people, but it's totally not. My first week, we had orientation, and at the end of that week, we had a live 1 hour chat, open Q&A with the CEO, Emmett Shear.
Yeah.
And I've not worked a lot of like Bay Area type companies, but I don't know how common that is. But it felt very like he's very approachable. I feel like I could like message him on Twitch or on Slack, and he would probably respond at some point if it was relevant enough. He would probably respond to me. So I feel like it kind of comes all the way down the ladder. It starts at the top and comes all the way down to build a really good, strong leadership team.
Yeah, he gives any CEO, everybody kind of tiptoes around and is a little cautious
Right.
about, um, demanding their time, and that makes sense.
They're busy.
Because there's thousands of employees. If every one of them demanded time, the CEO would just not have the ability to do their job. On the other hand, it's just in the nature of Emmett to like to engage with people. Anybody who's sincere and with good intent and is trying to understand things, he loves to engage with them and talk about their points of view and any information they have, and he is happy to share his point of view and the information that he has.
Right.
Um, the, in that same vein, when I came in for an interview, I ended up chatting with him for 3 hours, and I was thinking that was the interview because we weren't particularly organized in those early
Right,
days.
right.
Um, and and then towards the end of it, I said, um, is there anything else you need to know about me for this job? And he goes, is this an interview?
And you're like, okay, it's just getting. It's funny. I saw something on Reddit yesterday where a person went in for a technical interview. I think it was in the UK, and he went in for a technical interview, and somebody mistook him for a guest, an expert guest to be on the news, and they like set him in front of the camera, and it kind of reminds me of that. He's like, is this the interview? Like we're doing a live interview right on the air, and they started asking him about some like Apple controversy or something, and he answered it. So no, that's great. Um, Back to your different roles here. Which one was the most challenging to you? Which one do you find was like the most challenging, the hardest? Is it people or
Um,
is it technology?
well, it's people. I'm not a natural people skilled person. I love technology. I can sit there and talk about technology for hours, days on end. But the problem is to get anything done, you need people,
Yep.
and people need to be valued. They need to be understood, and there's just no way you can lead without putting people first and doing your best to find the middle ground of interest in what in the engineers and other people that are on the team versus the customer and the business. It's a difficult thing. Um, it's been it's I would say arguably it's gotten a lot harder over the last well, I've been in the business almost 40 years. It's gotten a lot harder over the years simply because while there's vastly more software engineers and product managers and everybody else that is necessary to produce product, um, the demand is just keeps outpacing the supply of talent.
Right.
And so, in general, the talent has choices. They don't have to work for you; they choose to work for you.
Yeah.
And so that you have to really spend time to work with them and try and create an environment that is a balancing act between making sure that we're keeping the customers happy, that we're creating sustainable businesses, um, that we're producing an environment that the team enjoys, um, that we're allowing people to grow. And sometimes growth means growing out of a team and they need to move on, and then being supportive of those people. bringing in younger people who are looking for a chance to learn something new, um, with the kind of environment where um, yes, there's pressure to do it well and get it done, but the patience to let people explore and learn and get to the point where they can make a contribution without feeling like the world's going to fall down on them if they make a mistake. Hard to do. We don't always do this well,
Well,
but that's the job, and I would say, at least for me, that is a much more difficult thing, and it consumes most of my time as opposed to thinking about technology. Luckily, we've got lots of smart people who um, can focus on the technology.
well, technology doesn't talk back, right? I mean, it either does what it's supposed to do or it doesn't. And you so like it's much easier than people, right? I mean, you can get technology to do what you want it to do if you twist enough gears and type enough characters. I mean, people you have to be a little more nuanced, a little more sensitive. I don't know what the right word is, but yeah, I definitely see what you're saying and how and that's probably why I've been in tech for 18 years now, and that's probably one of the reasons I've shied away from people roles thus far. Number one, I I've been just kind of it's the path I've been on, I guess you could say, but people are harder, people are challenging, and this role obviously I do a lot with people and work a lot with people, but it's different when they report to you and you're responsible for their production and things like that. So um, okay, if you're just joining us, we are streaming on streaming, and this show is all about live streaming in the AWS cloud. And we are talking about Amazon Interactive Video Service with Marty Hess, the general manager of IVS. I'd like to switch gears a little bit and get to the main topic of the show. Let's talk about interactive video service. Obviously, all of our viewers, I sure hope you know what Twitch is if you're here and watching us on the show. But people might not know about Amazon Interactive Video Service. Marty, what is Amazon Interactive Video Service? What is your 30-second, 1 minute, 2 minute answer to what is IVS?
Well, it's an AWS service that gives you the kind of video that Twitch does, all packaged together. So the players, the transcoding, the ingest, the origining, the distribution, the playback. In some cases, the broadcast tooling, if people choose to use that. And we take care of everything in between. You could almost think of it as we take care of the stuff between the two screens, the viewing screen and the camera screen. Um, it's hard to do it at scale. It's hard to do it with the world of different devices that are out there.
Oh yeah.
There's a number of challenges with it. So
So
we have it's hard to do it at a cost-effective level. It's in video is very different depending on the use case. So the use case, the video trade-offs that you make to create something like TikTok is different than what you do for YouTube, which is different than what you do for Hulu or Netflix or Amazon Prime Video, which is very different than what you use for UGC live video. It's relatively long form, and people are expecting an experience that mirrors what you would get from cable television
right,
or Netflix. But it's much more difficult to pull that off because when you can essentially load the content far into the future because it's a VOD,
right.
then if there's problems on the network or someplace, you're playing from what's been downloaded, the
The
content that has
buffer,
been
right,
downloaded ahead of time.
right,
So even, when you first start off, sometimes there's a little pause to get started to play a movie. And then quickly the pauses just kind of go away magically. And the reason is because it's typically downloaded 30 seconds, sometimes 2 minutes of content ahead of time. So if the network has a little hiccup and isn't performing for 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, usually you don't know that. It's just completely
right.
invisible to you. But for live video, you don't get to do that. You can't download 10 seconds into the future.
It doesn't exist
Imagine
yet.
Yeah, and so in general, for an interactive experience, you're looking to bring the latency down. So in general, we like to bring our latency down between 1 and 5 seconds, depending on the quality of the connection somebody has.
So 1 in 5 seconds. Let me throw some numbers out there. Let me read these off. And for all our viewers at home, you might want to take notes. There may be a test on this later. I'm just saying. At any given moment, there are more than 2.5 million viewers tuned into Twitch. Okay, that's fine. That's interesting. The site averages 31 million daily viewers. In 2021, more than 1.3 trillion with a T minutes of live stream video are watched on Twitch. 2020 it was 600 billion minutes. So what you just said about the challenges and the fact that we want to deliver 1 to 5 seconds latency, how in the world is it even possible to deliver 1.3 trillion minutes of video at 1 to 5 seconds latency with high quality playback? How's that possible?
Well, there's a number of things. It starts with a lot of money. So
True.
the video is expensive to do.
Yeah.
There's just no way around it. In the early days, the online subscriptions were very expensive, and at least the Twitch business model and most UGC video services, the video is free. You don't have to pay anything for
Right.
it.
Right.
So you have to figure out what are you going to do to make a sustainable business, and with the intrinsically high cost of the cost of goods, which is minutes watched or hours watched. So the investment is substantial, and in our case, the choice that we made was to build our own global private network.
Right.
So we have 100 pops around the world. Now these are in colos. We didn't build buildings,
Right.
but
Right.
we put server racks and colos around the world, and then we connect them directly together into our origin data centers and transcode data centers, if you like. And then that's the first half. The other half is you have to make deals. You have to have a negotiating team that goes around the world and makes deals with every prominent ISP in the world.
Right.
And you've got to say, hey, we want to buy wholesale and we want really good quality. So we want to make sure that we have enough capacity going to you. Because if our video has to go from our POP out onto the public network to get to you, the quality is going to be lower. So you need to have all these direct connections with ISPs all over the world. And to do that, you need POPs all over the world. And if you want to keep it on your network, then you need a backbone to connect everything together. And then you need the origin data centers, positioned around the world also to process the video. So the way it works today is when you connect as a broadcaster, you connect first through your ISP. Your ISP connects to one of our POPs. And so once it hits that POP, it's on our network. It's off. I mean, it's technically not on the internet anymore.
Right.
It's on our private
Private
network.
network.
Yeah, it's on our private network. It goes up to one of our origin data centers. We process the video, and then we push it out to one of our 100 POPs. And again, still on the private network. It gets to a POP. It is handed to you through an edge server, but it goes through your ISP or the viewer's ISP. And
The last mile.
yeah, the last mile. And in some sense, it never actually hits the internet. I
Well,
mean,
in the
if
traditional
you
sense,
generally
right.
think of the internet
Right.
as like I throw it out there and somehow it gets to the other side, it
And if
doesn't
people
really work that way for
right,
us.
if people understood, like, go do a trace route, and like we talked about before, do a trace route to any website in the world, regardless of where the
Yeah.
server is, and then take all those IPs and throw them in a tool. There are tools out there you can upload bulk IP addresses and map them out, and then just connect the dots on all those and look at how sometimes how ridiculous the route is for your request to get twitch.tv from a server, this HTML page served to you, how many different ISPs it hits, how many different networks and different machines it hits just to get there. I think yeah, you could build your own streaming solution. You could go to AWS tomorrow and turn up an EC2 instance and get a completely free get a open source streaming media server software, and you could turn up and you could start live streaming for free tomorrow, no problem.
Yes, you could. You could probably, there's probably an AMI somebody has built
Right,
where you can be up in 20 minutes.
but is anybody going to be able to actually view that video at low latency with high quality?
Yes, there's a lot of steps if you want to do it. I will give you, like, if I wanted to do something without IVS for fun, what I would probably do is I would find some kind of open source streaming
Mhm.
software. I'd put it on EC2, and then um, essentially I'd probably write it to S3, and then from S3, I would use that as origining for CloudFront.
Right,
CloudFront has a pretty good global footprint,
right.
and the costs are really low. It's an incredible value, and I would probably end up with that architecture, probably like 30 seconds of latency. I'm guessing
That
that's a
sounds about
pretty
right.
typical thing.
Yep.
Um, but I would have built a streaming
Sure.
system.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'd
And it
be fun.
works. And it
Yeah, and
works.
it worked.
Um,
And CloudFront would take care of a lot of the problems about how to get it around the world, because if you just served it directly out of EC2, um, you serving around the world is just not going to work well. You really need to
right.
go through some kind of distribution system that's designed to get it around the world, as opposed to the public internet. Because what you alluded to is if you just serve it from EC2 and expect it to get around the world, it's going to go over the public internet and it's going to go through hop after hop after hop after hop. And it would be, depending on where you're in the world, it's going to be unwatchable. It'll be non-existent. You can't persist any kind of reasonable frame rate. If you're close to that server, then it's going to
Right.
work fine. But CDNs generally do that job pretty well.
Right. And
Um,
CDNs have been around for since the beginning of the internet. So that it's pretty proven technology, and it serves a
yes,
purpose and
yes.
and does it well. And like you said, it's often very very cheap, surprisingly for
Well, it's for video, it can quickly not be cheap.
right. So me and you are going to start
If
our
you're trying to give away video, it can be not cheap very quickly. Almost any amount of money ends up being, a big issue for a product that you're giving away.
right. Um, Imagine telling a joke and the laughter comes 30 seconds later. Yeah, the
Yeah,
comment. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's. And so let's talk about this a little more, because I was talking to somebody. I was out in San Francisco and I got to visit headquarters last week. And one of our PMs and I got into a conversation. We were talking about sub-second latency. This is kind of the big, huge thing that a lot of people are talking about these days. Um, why is it important? And he did a good job of explaining to me um, certain certain types of content. It matters. Um, think about sports betting, for example.
oh gosh, yeah.
I mean, if you're in a stadium and you want to place a bet on the next, is Tom Brady's going to throw a pass the next play, or are they going to hand the ball off? And you want to place that bet in real time, and somebody down the road wants to place that bet too,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you could get a text message that says he handed it off, and by the time you place your, so obviously very very low latency matters to certain clients and certain customers. Um, what can we talk about? What can we say about the future of
Well, we should
sub-second latency?
talk about, the different video use cases, because the
Sure.
latency needs are like all over the map. So for what we're doing right now, which having this conversation over the internet, which was darn near impossible like 20 years ago. Skype was barely working and barely
Barely.
tolerable. And nowadays we kind of take that for granted, and that's generally because of the improvement of the internet's infrastructure for the most part. There's been certainly algorithms, codecs, and things that have made improvements, but it's largely due to the infrastructure improvements. So the target there is generally regarded as like anything over 300, 350 milliseconds, which would be like zero point 0.3 to 0.35 of a second. Anything over that just makes this kind of experience completely impossible. It's just the human sensibilities for it would just be thrown off. It wouldn't be enjoyable. So the ideal would be like 150 milliseconds, which would be like the target. So 150 milliseconds is a very different video system than the video system you build for mass distribution of content where multiple people will be watching the same piece of content. Because now you need more of a point-to-point kind of distribution. You need it to you can't afford anything in between the two people practically, because almost everything will add latency, and you quickly get to the point where the latency is just too high. It's more expensive in general to do. And so that's why we use other forms of distribution. So Twitch and pretty much every CDN uses some hierarchy of distribution, where it goes from an origin to some intermediate cache to an edge cache, potentially more intermediate caches. And the reason is to reduce your backbone charges, because when it's point to point, if we were a 100-person conversation, then that would be 100 conversations going over the backbone. With tiered distribution, you'd potentially keep that down to just a few conversations, a few replications of that over the backbone, because you could just do the edge replication,
Right.
where a bunch of people watch from one edge server. So it's a cost savings mechanism. It also saves on server time, because we can do it much more efficiently in a tree-like structure than if you're serving 100 people from your origin server. But mostly it's an internet charges savings. So that's why we get to the next one, which is where some form of global distribution. Getting a global distribution hierarchy under a second is pretty tough. It can be done. Some people might have noticed, we actually, with our existing HLS system, it's not uncommon to see under a second under certain cases. Oddly enough, when I'm watching broadcasters in Korea, it's under a second.
Really?
And I'm on the West Coast. So it's,
Wow.
it,
Well,
it's
that makes
we have
sense
good.
though. There's fiber. There's a fiber connection between
Yes,
APAC
yes,
and Western U.S. So I mean, it's
yes,
just
but their first mile is awesome.
right.
They
Exactly.
have the best first mile, as far as I can tell, in the world.
Exactly.
Uh, just so many people have quality connections, and they can get that first mile done so well. And once you get that out of the way, then the rest of it's a lot easier, because it's on our private network. So we've been testing a sub-second system for a long time, and it does really well. It's one of those things that a lot of work needs to be done to improve its performance and bring the cost down so that it is comparable to an HLS system. HLS was developed so that it was compatible with existing CDNs,
Right.
and it was very low cost, or didn't require special servers, because the original media servers were video media
Right.
servers, and they were had expensive licenses, and they were very computationally intensive. So they said, let's come up with something that just works with web servers, and so that was HLS. Lower cost, greater compatibility. Initial latency
And
with those
not
things.
Flash.
Yes, not Flash. Initial latency with those things was, on a good day, maybe 20 seconds, but in general, it would be like 30 seconds or more. For HLS systems. And HLS wasn't actually made for live, and so it was kind of a hack to make it work for live. It wasn't a big deal, but it just wasn't made for that. We hacked HLS a lot, and almost all of the content today is served over HLS. And as I said, it's typically like 1 to 5 seconds for people with just, typical high quality, not necessarily Korean quality
Right.
of internet connections. But depending where you are in the world, really it's mostly about your, not how far away you are. It's really has more to do with anything is your first mile. So the quality of your first mile really dictates most people's latency. But depending on your first mile, your latency might be 15 seconds or 20 seconds, even with all the optimizations we put in.
Right.
The one sub-second system totally throws away HLS. And this is a number of vendors out there have implemented these systems.
Are we talking about
And they're
WIP
based off
and
of some form of UDP protocol,
right?
typically going through WebRTC, if it's going to be browser compatible. If it's not going to be browser compatible, then
Just
people can
RTMP the whole way.
they can do whatever they want. Yeah, RTMP is a little archaic
Right.
for
Sure.
what people are doing. There's better designs now, but the advantage of not being web compatible is that you can invent whatever you want.
Right.
You kind of have more limitations when you're in a browser. Um, um, it's more difficult to pull off all the things you want to do. Anyway, so we're typically seeing that, it's easy to get under a second. Why would you want to get under a second, though? Sports betting, that's a good one. Game shows, potentially.
Sure. Trivia,
Um,
things like that.
Playing StarCraft together. No, way too slow. Sub-second, that's just not going to work. You need...
For multiplayer gaming, sure.
Yeah,
Of course.
you want like 50, 100 milliseconds. You just really need...
Tops.
Yeah, you just really want it to be low. So it's not good for that. But any video solution is really hard to pull off. Amazon with Luna and Google Stadia, which I think it's been killed.
Yep.
And NVIDIA has something. I think Microsoft has something. The way they do it is they basically put the game servers in your neighborhood.
Really?
Yes. The game servers are scattered all over the world, and your best multiplayer gaming experience, if you're going to do a multiplayer gaming experience,
Yeah.
is going to be with people who are relatively close to you. But anyway, the thing that's serving your image on your screen is probably really close to you.
Right.
And that's how they do that. But when you watch a broadcaster and they're on the other side of the world, well, that trick doesn't work.
Right.
And so you're going to have a whole bunch of latency. Same with multiplayer games. They try and put you on regional
Right.
servers so
Yep.
the experience doesn't suck. But again, with global video, where every broadcaster could reach every human on the planet, now you have different challenges. And so you're going to naturally have a distribution of latency. Not everybody's going to have the same latency.
Sure.
And so there's use cases where people say, no, I want everybody to have the same latency because we're going to do like a game show and we need everybody to have the same latency. Or we're going to do sports betting. We want everybody to have the same latency. It's like, all right, well, we can fake it.
Right.
by
Exactly.
slowing down
But it's
the
not going to
fast
be
people.
real time.
Yeah, we can't do it real time and then you run into this problem. So what portion of the planet do you want to
Right.
account for?
Right.
Because
So
if
everybody gets 30 seconds of latency. If you want
Yes.
like the worst case scenario, everybody gets a 30-second delay.
Yeah. So, well, that would be with HLS, but
Right.
with modern protocols, let's say the people on the far side of the planet, instead of being under a second, maybe they're 2 or 3 seconds, or somebody who has a bad ISP, in which case maybe it's 8 seconds,
Right.
or 12 seconds or something. So how far do you want to account for your potential audience?
But then that doesn't take into account the live audience of that event, if there is one, right? Like sports betting,
Yes.
for example. There's a stadium
Yes.
of 70,000 people. You can't force 30 seconds of delay on them or 10 seconds of delay on them. It's just impossible.
No. That's one of those things that's it's always joked about is the people in the bars near a stadium can hear the roar of the stadium. And then the bar roars in excitement, like maybe 5-10
Yep.
seconds later. And that's with cable.
Well,
That's with
see,
cable. That's not even the internet.
Exactly. So I watch football and I watch I stream it. I pay for a subscription and I get it streamed. And I still root for a team that I'm not going to name. that is from an
Avoiding controversy. I like
right.
that.
Um, Point being, my friends still live up there, and a lot of times, just this past Sunday, I'll get a text, "Oh, a stupid play," and I'll be like, "I'm 2 plays behind you, man. I mean, give me a break. You're spoiling the game for me." So yeah, I mean, and he's watching over the air. You know, he has local TV, broadcast TV, so he's over the air 30 miles from the broadcast antenna, and I'm 600 miles away. I have a fiber connection to my house, but still, I mean, I'm streaming it over the internet and getting probably 30 seconds of delay there. So yeah. So, if you're just joining us, just a quick recap. This is Streaming on Streaming, where we talk about live streaming with Amazon Interactive Video Service and all kinds of other fun topics related to that. Joining me today is Marty Hess, the general manager of Amazon IVS. And we are talking about IVS, as shocker that may be. So let's talk about transcoding, Marty. What do we use for transcoding with IVS?
IVS, it's not a secret. We've given various talks at various conferences on this. We use QuickSync from Intel. We started using that, oh gosh, maybe 6, 7 years ago. And almost everybody that gets a transcode at Twitch is on QuickSync. It's basically a GPU with some video functionality in it that's put onto a server chip. And we've got thousands and thousands of these servers up there to, transcode. I would say like 98% of the content that gets transcoded. A small portion of the content is transcoded with FFmpeg. And that's
Still,
typically, yeah. That's typically for partners and large events. The reason is for a lot more cost
right.
um, compared to the QuickSync chip. For a lot more cost, we can get a lower bit rate. And this lower bit rate makes it so that we have more capacity for more viewers. So the reason we do this for the big broadcasts is because they have the most viewers. So we get the biggest return on bitrate savings by applying it to the people with the largest audiences. There's a slight quality improvement, but for the most part, we've tuned the FFmpeg towards saving bits as much as possible. From a pure quality point of view, if you were to let FFmpeg do whatever it wanted to, it's going to produce some of the highest quality you can see in the industry, at least for the VOD world. So if you look at like Netflix and most large streaming services, when they process their huge catalog and turn it into 200 different video formats for
All the
being
different
compatible with
devices.
every device that's ever been made that can play a little bit of video. I believe this is, I can be wrong, it's just my conversations with them because this isn't the kind of video that I specialize in, but I believe it's all FFmpeg. And they just have a staff of people where they automate around it and they tune it and they do a lot of evaluations and tune it some more. They make contributions back to FFmpeg. So it's a pretty remarkable thing, but it's expensive to run.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense for the premium VOD content business. It makes less of general sense for the UGC world. UGC world,
User generated
you
content.
you need to bring, yes, user generated content. So like what TikTok, YouTube, Twitch does. You really need to bring the costs down lower to make the economics work. And if you look at what everybody does in the UGC space, it's lots and lots and lots of tricks to try and bring the price down on the video while still maintaining a good video experience for everybody. And there's constantly tuning and fiddling and research that's being done in that space because, well, video is massively expensive to hand out.
Right. So transcoding is one thing, but transmultiplexing, transmuxing is another thing, right? So what's your, if you had to explain transcoding versus transmultiplexing to someone that has no
Yeah,
knowledge of technology, how would you explain the difference?
yeah. So the way you would view this if you were a Twitch broadcaster, and let's say you just got started, and let's say you're broadcasting, you say, I've got a great internet connection. I'm going to broadcast it, 1080p at 8 megabits a second. It's going to be awesome. You would find, on average, around the world, only half the people in the world would
Right.
be able to watch you well. And the reason is because we're not creating what we call as a transcode ladder,
Right.
which is the same video shrunk to smaller and smaller sizes,
Right.
to account for the fact that not everybody has the bandwidth and they're able to watch at the higher resolutions, or they might run into device limitations. Not all devices can play 1080, or they might run into ISP issues with their own ISP where they're getting a lot of congestion, and so they need to drop to a lower resolution. So about half the world can't watch at what a lot of people take for granted, which is
Right.
a full HD
Yeah,
experience.
forget about 4K. We're talking just 1080 at this point.
Yes, about half the world cannot watch HD on the internet. At least in any consistent form, and not consistent enough to make it a pleasant experience.
Right.
Um, and so transcoding is pretty important if you're getting started as a broadcaster, because, well, you need every audience potential viewer you can find.
Sure.
And you're going to find that, initially you're being handicapped because we only give it out to the people who have a larger audience because it costs money. It's
Right.
expensive.
The other
And so
option
one,
is to just broadcast to have a transmux stream just broadcast at a lower resolution, right?
That's right. And so what is transmuxing? So transmuxing is, we still have to do something to your video. Even if we don't give you a transcode, we still have to do something to get it ready for viewing.
Right.
And that process of getting it ready for viewing is called transmuxing. And think of it as basically is we're not touching the video per se. We're touching the
The
packaging that the
wrapper.
video is in. And we're doing some variety of things to help make it easier for our player and the devices to play reliably. Everybody, theoretically, you can use any broadcasting software you want to broadcast on Twitch. And consequently, they do odd things sometimes, or maybe slightly unexpected things. And rather than trying to deal with all these on the player side, we do it on the origin side, where we take everybody's video and we transmux it if they're not going to get a transcode.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a transcode, you get all that cleanup stuff also. But a transmux is, a fraction of the cost of transcoding. But anyway, transcoding is really one of the first hurdles that every broadcaster on Twitch, tries to overcome is, how do I get a transcode?
Right.
And it's pretty simple. You just need to stream a few times on a regular basis and get at least 3 viewers, and then you get pushed into the class of people that deserve a transcode.
Right.
The reality is the vast majority of people that come up to broadcast have no viewers.
Well,
So
it's hard to build an audience. I mean,
yes,
it really is. I mean, we have 300 plus viewers here today, and a lot of that is probably due to the fact that we're on a channel that has 87,000 subscribers. I mean,
yes,
that's definitely a big bonus. But my son's tried to stream, and I've streamed and been in that lonely world of 1 viewers.
Yes. Yes.
Or 0 viewers of your stream, and it's hard to stay motivated, but consistency is the key. I mean, you got to keep it up until you build
consistency
that
matters. And certainly I would advise anybody getting started to stick with one particular game or subject area.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that's really critical is that you're social. Don't just sit there and play the game quietly by yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially, as soon as that first person shows up, engage with them, because the reason why people go to smaller streamers is for the engagement.
That's a perfect segue into my next question. So we have about 10 minutes left here, and my next question is about so the service is called Amazon Interactive Video Service, right? But so far we haven't a little bit. We haven't really touched much on interactivity. So what does it mean to have like an interactive experience? Why does it matter? I mean, we just kind of spoiled a little bit of that, but like, aren't people just kind of logging on to just watch somebody play a video game? Obviously, that answer is no. Um,
Well,
so let's talk about the interactivity,
sometimes.
right? Um, there are some different streams on Twitch. I mean, you could find some non-interactive streams, but UGC, user-generated content, interactivity is huge. I kind of relate it to the similar experience to sitting in the room with a bunch of friends or family and watching a movie or a sporting event. Um, even if you think this is a weird analogy, but think about like the best meal you've ever had. If maybe it might have been in a restaurant and you probably just had an amazing bunch of company with you. You had maybe a few drinks if you drink alcohol, and you just had some laughs. And it's about the total experience. To me, it's not just the meal that is memorable. It's the experience that's memorable. It's the interaction, right? I mean, it's so I'm rambling a bit here, but to me, it's about the active participation in the entertainment as opposed to the passive consumption of entertainment. And to me, that's what makes the difference. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's what attracted me to Twitch in the first place
Yeah.
is the sense of the internet can feel like you're in a large empty room with lots of, well, excuse me, it's like walking into a mall with all the stuff in the world there, or walking in the library with every book in the world there, and there's no other humans around. Can't see anybody. And this is very different. This is where you walk in where there's a tremendous amount of content. And everywhere you go, there's people you can see enjoying the same thing that you're doing. And so the content is really not just the streamer. The content is also the streamer engagement with the audience. The content is also the audience engaging with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And in the content is the streamer reacting to
Right.
the audience engaging with each other. And it creates an effect that is, I think, is unique. Because if you go shopping or you go to the library, in general, you do not expect anybody to actually approach you and talk to you.
Right.
There's just none of that. But this is weird because first off, you can engage with the person who's broadcasting, the entertainer, if you like. And then the audience, it's expected that the audience is going to talk to each other.
Well,
And people want to do it and they have a good time.
right. I mean, part of this is because I'm new to the technology, not new to the technology, but I'm new to live streaming on a regular basis. But I'll give you an example from this very stream. Earlier on in the stream, I'm looking at the chat, and a couple people mentioned that your volume was a little low, and I was immediately able to adjust that volume level and turn it up to an acceptable level. That it worked. I mean, if you're watching something on television, can you call the cable company and say, can you turn up the volume, please? No, it just doesn't happen. I mean, that's impossible in any other medium other than this.
Oh yeah. When I watch a lot of new broadcasters, they get unsolicited help through chat on how to improve their broadcast. The
And
technical side, lighting, audio,
yeah,
video, etc.
sure.
And sometimes offline, and they'll even get my help where we'll do some more tests to help them figure out how to tune their system.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's awesome. So, we're at 5 minutes left. I have like 50 more questions for you, but, I think that we've covered quite a lot. Hopefully, Daily Push asks, who do you watch? What streamers do you watch?
Oh gosh, well, lately I've become a euthermal addict. He's been just doing crazy stuff, um, and I'm really enjoying it. He creates these streams where he says, "I'm only going to play Marine Medevac," or "I'm only going to play, air," or "I'm going to do." My favorite was Ghost only. It's I find these challenges, as he refers to them, is really quite entertaining.
What?
But I typically follow, gosh, I've trimmed it down. I had like 200 that I was following. It was just way too many. I think the real metric for me is who do I subscribe to? And I keep that a much smaller list. I think I'm right now subscribing to maybe 10-ish people right now. Most of them are StarCraft,
Yeah.
but occasionally people who do other things. I'm particularly fond of scientists when they decide to join. I got a PhD physics student that I subscribe to just simply because he'll answer some of my physics questions.
Wow, that's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, I'm a big fan of people who tear down electronics and kind of
Oh yeah,
either fix them or try to hack them, or
yeah.
like I'm just fascinated with that whole genre. So that's what has been in my kind of playlist lately. 4 minutes left. I have, as I mentioned earlier, I threw out some numbers and I told you to take some notes because there may be a test. And here is the test. At any given moment, how many million viewers are tuned into Twitch? The first correct answer will get their pick of an Amazon IVS t-shirt or a pair of socks, and I will mail that to the Raymond Camden, 2.5 million. Perfect. We've got Sorry Island Fox, not quick enough, but thank you very much for participating. Raymond, I will contact you if you could send me. So I'm on Twitter at Recursive Codes. Raymond, if you could contact me via Twitter, I will make sure to get your contact information and shoot you off your choice. I want to thank everybody who has been here today. Marty, thank you so much for taking your time to join me and to chat. Always a pleasure, and maybe we can have you on again sometime and get to the other 50 questions that I had on my list. But appreciate your time, and thanks for joining me. And for
All right,
everybody
thank you. It
else,
was fun.
yeah, no problem. For everybody else, this is again a weekly show, 1 p.m. Pacific and 4 p.m. Eastern. So please feel free to tune in every week. Next week, joining us will be an actual regular from the AWS Twitch channel, Darko Masaros. And Darko's a pretty experienced and great streamer. And we're going to talk about the benefits of live streaming. What is it about live streaming that is, how can live streaming be used to build out your service or gain some kind of visibility into what you're trying to promote? So join us next week, and thank you all again, and we'll see you next time.